And joining us for a further look on what's playing itself out in that market scene is David Shapiro from Sasfin Securities. David, a pleasure. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
We know that we're still watching monetary policy. We're still watching the Fed. I believe the Fed has been very clear at this point, but markets are always keen to look ahead, and to be a little bit speculative where interest rates are concerned. Are we accepting now that it might be just a trickier journey to those cuts that we really want?
I don't even think the experts know what's happening. And I mean that in all fairness, because if we looked at the job reports on Friday, consensus was, call it 180, and it came in double. So you say, hold on a sec, we're paying you a lot of money to forecast. You've got all these fancy models, you're getting it completely wrong. So I think even the so-called experts are underestimating the strength of the employment market in the US. But what is relevant is that inflation's coming down, and I think the driving force is going to be more the inflationary trend than maybe the underlying strength of the economy, because that's not demand push inflation. It's not coming through. So I think watch the trend in inflation more so than perhaps some of the other indicators that are coming through. So the market on Friday, the US markets, they stuttered a little bit. They were confused by the employment number and then brushed it aside and said, gee, just have a look at the tech earnings. These companies are just printing money. Let's rather focus on that.
That, I think, is a more even picture. Also, what's proving to be an even picture, just not what we would like to see, is the Chinese economy. PMI data out this week, and we are expecting it to still reflect an economy that's under pressure. I think we're also starting to accept that that picture is also a little bit more complicated than we thought, and maybe the experts don't know here either.
No, this is a worry. And I think they're battling there again to get the economy on its feet. They haven't given it a boost, a real boost. It's little bits here and there. Even the stock market is beginning to reflect that investors are abandoning the Chinese stock market. So it's if you look at it in terms of multiples, it's very low and it looks very appealing. But for the meantime, people are saying, this is kind of uninvestable. Let's go look elsewhere. I don't care whether it's cheap or not. Yes, there does come a point where it becomes too attractive to ignore. But I think for the meantime, I think China's battling. It's battling to get things. And the Evergrande story hasn't helped. I think that's got to play its way out. It's a complicated issue, but it depends. I think what the markets are looking is, how are you going to handle, or how are you going to treat the foreign bondholders above your local people whose savings are going to come under a lot of pressure. So a lot of questions around China, and for South Africa it's important. It's very important for us, particularly on the commodity side. So at the moment, China's unplayable. We don't know how to play it. And anyway, so we'll watch.
I want to bring it home now. MultiChoice and the Canal Plus. Very interesting developments over the weekend, with MultiChoice's valuation now really coming under question. Now, of course, David, there's a conversation to be had here about what the true value of MultiChoice, but also something to be said about Canal Plus that continues to buy MultiChoice stocks. That could look a little bit hostile, a little bit more hostile than what we think, could it?
The big question is that media companies, the law, the act is, foreigners can't hold more than 20%. Canal Plus owns 35.01. So, and they might be forced to make a mandatory offer. But how can they make a mandatory offer if the law says, listen, you can't hold more than 20%? Those are voting rights. So what might happen is you get a certain class of shares where they have the economic value, and they own the economic value, but they don't own the voting rights. So I don't know how this is going to play out. My own personal opinion, and it doesn't count a lot, I promise you, is that I think it would really be good for MultiChoice if Canal Plus, if a multinational company like that owned them. First of all, they've got plenty of money and they've got plenty of content, and they could give it a bit of a rev. But anyway, don't fight the law. So,
We'll be watching that one. Also, very interesting times ahead, David. I'm keen to get your stock pick, but first I'd like us to reflect on counters that have found favor with your industry peers.
I'm going to go locally. I'll go with the banks. I think Absa Bank looks pretty good at the moment, just from a valuation point of view. I think if we get even a slight bit of growth out of the out of South Africa, or even optimism that we're going to see growth, low load shedding levels, maybe a commodity price uptick that just improves things slightly. Absa is very, very cheap compared to other banks. In earnings terms, it's the cheapest of certainly the big four, big five banks. So I think there's a margin of safety to its underlying its underlying share price at the moment. You're getting a lot of earnings for what you're paying for it, and you just need a little bit of an increase in optimism. And despite its operational issues, I think at this price you could probably nibble and look for probably 10, 20, 30 rand upside.
African Rainbow Minerals. So we're seeing the resources were under serious pressure year to date, and this is one of the cheapest ones. And I think as we turn the corner on high rates, as China turns the corner, this is one of a very cheap name that is very well diversified across a range of materials, and because of some technical factors, specifically the exclusion from some major international indices in the last quarter of last year, it has become a bit beaten down because of forced selling from index trackers and quasi-index trackers, and because of that, it's looking very cheap for a very nice set of assets that is, again, being well managed. So we like African Rainbow Minerals for at this level.
All right, David, keen to get your thoughts here. Absa and ARM.
Well, Absa's a safe pair of hands. If you don't know where to put your money, put it in the banks. You're getting a nice dividend yield there. But my contention is always, you're in an economy that's not really growing. So you're not going to shoot the lights out, because banks can't grow if no one's got the confidence, or if there's no underlying growth. It means it takes away a lot of corporate activity. So I'm not discounting it. If you don't know where to go in the South African economy, our banks are very attractive, giving very nice dividend yields, and they're not going to lose your money. So yes, but are you going to get rich out of it? Probably not. African Rainbow Minerals, that's a bottom of the market call, and I think your broker there was correct. It's the bottom of the cycle. Hopefully, we were just talking about China. If China don't buy iron ore, we're in trouble. They better, and that's a problem. The iron ore price is looking a bit vulnerable at the moment. 125, it's holding up, but it's a commodity markets at the moment are a tough call, but. Just to satisfy you, I think probably the upside's greater than the downside, but I don't know how long the downside, or you know what I mean? I don't know how long this is going to bumble along. It's probably not going to fall a lot further, but on the other hand, you might not find it really doing well. So,
and which stock? Yes, which stock are you loving today?
Me, have a look at Signia's healthcare ETF. What's it called? SYGH, I think. I hope I'm getting it right and I'm not misleading people who might be watching. But what's interesting in that, it's got a nice stake in Novo Nordisk and a very good stake in Eli Lilly. And those are the two weight loss drug producers, as well as Novartis, which has been doing well. So I for anybody who's looking for exposure to pharma, overseas pharma, this is well placed. And a nice entry point, particularly, for those two areas, which I still think are a major theme of mine, weight loss drugs.
I think it's a theme for all of us right now, David, early in the year. Thank you so much for your time, David. It's always a pleasure having you with us. Now, before we go, that was David Shapiro from Sasfin Securities.